Assalamualaikum and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar, How to Look into Your Thesis from the Perspective of the Examiners. My name is Celine Ng, and I will be responsible for hosting this webinar today. And I'm glad to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Andri Kusbiantoro from Department of Civil Engineering Technology. Before we started, I would like to run through a few technical considerations. First, please turn off your microphone when the speaker is presenting to reduce noise disruption for the smooth flow of the program. Second, we will have Q&A session after the speaker finishes his sharing session. You may directly ask questions to Dr. Andri, or you may send in your questions at the chat box anytime during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session. Thank you for your cooperation. To begin the ceremony with blessing from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, I would like to invite Mr. Abdul Salam Al-Hakimi to lead the Doa recitation.
A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin hamdan yuwafi ni'amahu wa yukafi'u mazidah. Ya rabbana yang bagi li jalali wajhika wa azimi sultanik. Allahumma ighfir lana wa liwalidayna warhamhum kama rabbayana shighara wa li jami'il muslimin wal mu'minina wal mu'minat al-ahya wal amwat birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, hanya padamu kami panjangkan kesyukuran atas segala rahmat dan berkat-Mu. Kami memohon taufik dan hidayah-Mu, kurniakanlah kesejahteraan dan kebahagiaan kepada kami, bukakanlah hati kami, lapangkanlah dada kami supaya kami dapat mengisi ilmu pengetahuan yang berguna untuk agama, bangsa dan negara. Ya Allah, ya Rahim, kami memohon kepadamu agar engkau berkatilah majlis ini dengan limpahan rahmat-Mu. Semoga segala usaha kami dalam menjayakan majlis ini mendapat keredaan-Mu. Mudah-mudahan engkau permudahkanlah segala urusan kami dan lancarkanlah urusan kami. Ya Allah, Jalali wal Ikram, sesungguhnya pada hari ini kami berkumpul kerana-Mu, Ya Allah. Kami memohon kekuatan dari hadrat-Mu, Ya Allah, supaya kami yang hadir pada hari ini dapat melaksanakan segala kebajikan dan kami pun perlindungan daripada melakukan keburukan. Rabbana atina hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi washabihi wasallam.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Mr. Hakimi, for the doa. May our event today run smoothly and be blessed by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Inshallah. First of all, let me briefly introduce our speaker. Associate Professor Dr. Andri Kusbiantoro started as a structural engineer in Indonesia before he became a lecturer at University Malaysia Pahang, UMP. He contributed his knowledge and expertise at UMP for almost 9 years. In addition, he was appointed as Deputy Dean of Research and Postgraduate Studies at UMP since June 2016 till August 2019. His expertise lies in non-destructive testing for concrete, concrete forensic, and pozzolanic and cement replacement material. Dr. Andri continued his journey as a lecturer at UTHM since February 2020 until now. Without further ado, I will turn the time over to Dr. Andri.
Thank you, Dr. Tubi Selin, for the kind introduction today. You can hear my voice, right?
Yes.
Okay, before that, I would like to apologize because I have to turn off my video during the presentations to minimize the internet disruptions. Can I do that?
No problem,
Yes, Doctor,
Doctor.
you may.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
yes,
you.
no problem.
Alright, so Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Apa kabar semua? I hope you're doing well and staying safe at home right now. As introduced by Dr. Tubi Selin just now, my name is Andri Kusbiantoro. You can call me Andri. I'm serving the Department of Civil Engineering Technology in our faculty. So nice to know and meet you all today. I was asked by the head of the postgraduate department, Dr. Azrin, to share some insights on specific topics related to postgraduate study. So I chose this topic knowing that perhaps some of you need a new perspective to look at your thesis, mainly on how the examiner will generally comment on your thesis. And it is not a strict guideline, since I know it's a school of thought. But I will leave the technical quality of your thesis to you, since you know better about your own expertise. But I hope these brief insights will give you some idea on how to improve your thesis later on. Okay, as people always say, tak kenal maka tak cinta. And some of my profile has been introduced by Celine just now. So I want to add a bit, right? I graduated from the Civil Engineering Department from Institute Teknologi 10 November in Indonesia. And then I completed my Master and PhD from University Teknologi Petronas, Malaysia. And then I joined as a lecturer in UMP before I joined UTHM just before this pandemic outbreak in February 2020, last year. So my expertise is in concrete structure and materials, mainly those related to the use of pozzolanic material or cement replacement material, sustainable materials, and also geopolymer concrete. And currently, I'm very interested in inventing alternative non-destructive testing methods that will predict the concrete strength from different perspectives. I have worked on several research grants. The number is not that much compared to your supervisor's grant or maybe active researcher out there. But Alhamdulillah, these grants help me to graduate my PG students. So far, I have graduated 6 PhD students and 4 master students, all by research. As an examiner, I have examined so far 10 PhD students and 4 master theses. And as a chairman, I have never counted them. It's too much. And hopefully I can convince you that I know quite a bit about the topic today. And also I can convince you to stay in front of your screen for the next 1 hour. So these slides are like a compilation of my own experience in finding the common issue in the postgraduate thesis as an examiner, as a chairman as well. The problems may or may not affecting your examination results, but still for sure it will affect the impression of the examiner to you. Okay, let's start with the basic one. What is the strength of your thesis? Or you can say, which part is the most interesting in your thesis? To answer this question, let's look at my habit. Well, I'm not really sure whether it's a good habit or not, but I always do it when reading the thesis. So typically, this is how I read a PhD or master thesis. In the first reading, I will read the problem statement. Okay, I will read the problem statement. For me, it should not be more than 2 paragraphs, since problem statement is the reason why you do all these things. If you cannot summarize into 2 paragraphs, it means you are still unclear why you are doing this, right? All the supportive statements should be placed in the background. The next one, I will see how you generate the step to solve the issue. And the steps are normally reflected as objective. Right? If your objective doesn't really show the steps, then how you will solve the problem? Okay, it's like the objective will show you the sequence in solving the problem. In the next one, I want to know how much literature you have read. What is your contribution to the body of knowledge? How your research will fill the existing gap. I don't really like to use the term novelty since millions of students are doing research right now, and each of them will have their own contributions. So I will only use the term novelty when I want to refer the work given by the Nobel laureate scientists. Okay, so I prefer to use alternative or maybe the contribution, the research gap, summary of research gap, and so on. After you know your contribution, then I will go to the methodology flowchart. Just by looking at the flowchart, we can notice how particulate the students work. Because why? When you're writing this chapter, the methodology chapter, or organizing the flowchart, you should have one intention in mind. Remember just now your contribution to the body of knowledge? This is how you will prove it. You should write the methodology as detailed as possible. So anyone on this planet who want to reproduce your work, let's say for validation purpose, can perfectly imitate your work. But if you write the methodology or flowchart with the impression that seems you're hiding something, it will make the examiner later on dig further what is wrong with your thesis or what is wrong with your work. Okay. After that, I will look at the conclusions. Have your objective been answered in the conclusions? If you have 3 objectives, then you should have 3 conclusions. You're supposed not to have 3 objectives but 10 conclusions. It's the incorrect way to do it. If you're in doubt when concluding your own works, it means you're not confident with your thesis. So never doubt when concluding your works. Give a strong impression. The first reading will give the first impressions for me. As Uncle Roger always say, it is either Haya atau Fuyo. Right. This is the first impressions. After that, I will move on to the second reading. I will spend more time to read all your explanation in the analysis and discussions. Normally, I will take some time to read this chapter. I won't be able to finish it in one reading only. And occasionally, I will go back and forth between methodology and result and analysis, and then back to methodology. After completing this stage, then I will have some recommendation in mind, whether pass without corrections, with minor corrections, major corrections, or resubmit or reviva. Normally, examiner will already have the decision during this stage. What about the final read? Okay, the final read is like the MSG to Uncle Roger, right? It will escalate the flavor of your thesis, right? All the literature review, introductions, appendix, references, the title, it will complete your thesis. All right, it's like the MSG. Why first impression is important? Because it's like creating the mood of your examiner. For example, if your examiner believes that you know what you're doing from the first impression, and then they found some minor mistake in the discussion and analysis, the examiner will feel that, oh, I think I can forgive the mistake. All right, maybe he or she will need 1 month or 2 months to revise the thesis. Then you will get minor corrections. All right. Or maybe they're still confident, but you need more time. They will give you 3 months or 4 months, but still minor. But if the examiner feels that you have no idea on what you are doing, and then they will bring the impression to the second read. And since the examiner spends more time to read this chapter, right? So you have to ensure they will have enjoyable experience when reading this chapter. Okay. This will go to the next topic, right? Your thesis is, you pick one or you pick two, hard to read, confusing, convoluted, right? You have to remember that normally examiner is given 30 working days to read your thesis, but their work is not only reading your thesis. So make your thesis stay away from those 3 problems. What you can do to minimize these problems, what I can suggest, you can use short sentence, right? Even though the human brain has the amazing capability, but it has limited processing capacity at one time. So our mind will comprehend a short sentence better than the longer one. How short? I suggest between 10 to 20. But of course, you can always combine some shorter sentences, some longer sentences, be variative, but not that much. For example, you have so many sentences with 50 word length. It's going to confuse the reader. Okay. And I give you the example over here. All right. Economists consider AirAsia a large, low-cost airline corporation founded in 1993 by DRB Highcom before it was bought by Tony Fernandez and Kamarudin Meranun in 2001 to be a model in the development of modern low-cost airline industry worldwide. Seems nothing wrong with the sentence, right? It's a one sentence, it's a 39 words. For me, it's quite exhaustive. If you have hundreds of these kind of sentences in your thesis, then it's going to be quite troublesome for the examiner to read because very tiring to read your thesis. The impact, your viva voce can be extended because the examiner take time to read, or the examiner can get annoyed and then you will get major, for example, major correction, or you have to resubmit. What you can do, you can split the sentence into three ideas. All right, three ideas mean three sentences. For example, economists consider AirAsia to be a model in the development of modern low-cost airline industry worldwide. One sentence. DRB Highcom founded this large low-cost airline corporation in 1993. Second sentence. It was then bought by Tony Fernandez and Kamarudin Meranun in 2001. So each sentence has 16 words, 10 words, and 12 words. If you see this kind of sentences, which one you feel give you a better idea? All right, I leave the answer to you, but for me, it's the second sentence, right? The second paragraph, sorry. The second paragraph is much easier for me to read than the first sentence. The next method that you can use is to avoid using unnecessary words, right? We are so used to it. It's like when we are writing a long sentence, it's showing that our thesis is smart or our thesis is complicated. Right? It's not really a good thing, and it's not a trend right now. For example, what is the unnecessary word? It means if you delete those words without changing the meaning of the sentence, then delete it. Right? For example, it is well known that the strength of specimens. You can start the strength of specimens, blah blah blah. It is well known. It's not giving any function over here. Just like accessories. A number of studies have shown that blah blah blah. Delete it. Better you start with the trend follows, right? It is worth mentioning also the same. If you can delete it. And sometimes you can replace the word with another signposting word. It is quite concise, so you can have a better readability. As an example, there is another reason why you can replace with therefore, right? Despite the fact that although it is clear that clearly. And other example like evidently, possible, I think it possibly, supposed to be possibly, yeah? And then notably, all those words can replacing a longer sentence. Another one, try to use a strong verb and avoid nominalizations. What does it mean with nominalizations? You're changing a verb into a noun. For example, from estimate suddenly become estimation. Decide, decisions. Correlate, correlations. I give you the example here, why you should use the strong verb. We perform an analysis to investigate if engine oil viscosity led to an improvement in engine efficiency and resulted in a reduction in the maintenance cost. Very long sentence. Right? What you can do, without changing the meaning, you can directly use the strong verb. We investigated if engine oil viscosity improved engine efficiency and reduced maintenance costs. Right? If you are doing this, if you using the strong verb, even Vincenzo Casano will approve your thesis. No doubt about that. Right? The next common issue, the paragraph is meaningless or struggling to convey the idea. So you have written thousands of paragraphs in your thesis. It is quite normal to get lost in the jungle of your thesis. But you have to set a clear path for the reader. Turn your thesis into a theme park so they can enjoy looking at the scenery of the chapters in your thesis. Even revisit them again sometime. You have to guide them through the path. So what is the obstacle of your journey is a disconnected paragraph. And don't worry, you're not alone. It is a classic issue in postgraduate thesis. Even not only postgraduate thesis, it's a technical writing. It's a classic issue. That is why you should always plan the flow. You should always plan the flow and logically structure your sentence. So let's compare these two sentences. You deserve a vaccine, but the stock is limited. And the stock is limited, but you deserve a vaccine. Which sentence will suggest that you will get the vaccine? Right. As a reader, we will tend to focus at the end of sentence. So the second sentence will give more implication that you will get the vaccines. The stock is limited, but you deserve a vaccine. This is what we call as a stress positions. How you write your stress position in the paragraph? The stock is limited, but you deserve a vaccine. In the next sentence, you should use the stress position as a topic positions. So people see the connections. All right, it's called as a sign posting. So the next sentence will be, you will receive your shot at the beginning of the next week, or you will receive your jab at the beginning of next week. Right. So the same thing goes when the examiner read the thesis. We will focus at the end of the sentence, naturally. What I expect when I reading a paragraph, I will get a stress sentence in the last part, or maybe in the beginning of paragraph. It's up to your writing style. In here, I will show you the location of stress sentence at the last part, right? The blue color. In here, the paragraph I modify the paragraph from Zhu et al., the scientific report from Nature. So the topic sentence will introduce what is the paragraph is all about. It's one sentence only. And then the next sentence will develop the idea, okay? Before you have like a summary, it's a stress sentence at the end of the paragraph. And the stress sentence will be connected to the next paragraph as a topic sentence. In here, the keyword is desalinations, right? Cost-effective desalinations. The next paragraph, automatically, the examiner will think about desalinations, right? So you should guide the examiner or the reader about desalinations. If you skip the step, it's like playing a Super Mario game, okay? Super Mario can jump very far, right? Perhaps he can even skip 2 stones in here. Same goes with your examiner. They are the person who are the expert in the field and has the ability to understand the thesis. So if your paragraphs are the stepping stone and they are poorly organized, you can bet they will fail to pass the gap, drown in the jungle of your thesis, and curse you because it's too far. They cannot see really the connection between paragraphs. Or maybe they can make it, but they will still curse you because they have to struggle that hard to read your thesis. So why not providing a good path for them and save yourself from being cursed? I also strongly suggest for you to use active voice in your thesis. And again, this is a very classic issue. Maybe long time ago, people will say, you use passive voice because it's more polite. It is more technical. Now the trend is no longer showing the same. So better to use active voice because it's direct, it's a straightforward and more precise. For example, the models comparing the consumption style of urban and suburban residents were evaluated. Who evaluated the models and what was being evaluated? The sentence is not clear. But if you change to active voice, the study or we evaluated the models comparing the consumption style of urban and suburban residents. It's more precise, it's more straightforward compared to the passive voice. But does it mean you should avoid passive voice? No. Passive voice is useful if you want to avoid repetitions, right? And then you want to explain methodology. I believe most of your methodology will consist of passive voice, right? I believe that. It is also useful in paraphrasing, or you want to enrich the sentence structure. So you won't get the boring sentence or boring paragraph. You have the combination of them. And the passive voice is useful when you want to avoid the unclear relationship. For example, a scenario in your study, you observe the decreased tensile strength of alloy under low temperature conditions. So you write active voice. Low temperature decrease the tensile strength of alloy, but is it? The condition only state under low temperature conditions. You cannot immediately conclude that low temperature caused the decreasing strength of the alloy. What you can do, you can write the passive voice. The tensile strength of alloy was decreased under the conditions of low temperature. And in the next sentence, maybe you explain the other factor why the strength is reduced. How much the ratio between passive voice and active voice? I'm looking at 75% active and 25% active. But again, it's not a magic formula or magic number. You can always play around with the number. But the active voice will be the dominant portion in your thesis. The next issue is about the research gap claim. Right? I took the example in here from my PhD student. One thing about claim, you have to prove it if you want the claim to be valid, or else it will end as a self-claim only. So in here, my student will first study about the boundary of her research and what people have done with it. Only then she will come up with a topic that will fill the existing gap for her proposal, for her PhD proposal. So all these gaps may be valid at the time she did the review. She did the review in February 2021 and she looked 10 years back, only in Scopus. But 3 years after, right, other researchers may fill the gap. So it becomes a race. Who published first can claim it first. That's why publish fast and grade on time. Do not procrastinate. Once other people has published the similar topic with you faster, then your topic will no longer be relevant. You can no longer claim the research is proposed to fill the gap. This gap, you cannot claim it anymore during your viva. That's why the importance of publish fast and grade on time. Okay. You can see in here the C study about material A, B, C, and D on concrete, and technique A and B to treat the material. And this is concrete A. She also study about concrete B using material A, B, and C. And in the middle, there is a gap using technique, specific technique and specific concrete. So she come with it as a gap. 0 article has been published in this topic. Okay, and the rest you can see is a lot article has been published in material A, about 2,769 and 10,037. So many articles. It means the article is saturated, or the topic is saturated, or the topic is trending. Right. And then the methodology. This is another common issue. Like I told you before, the detail of your flowchart will describe how detailed you conduct the experiment. But most of the time, the flowchart is presented as a basic flowchart, very basic. Just box, arrow, box, arrow, box, arrow, end. It's not a scientific flowchart. But it even ignore the basic symbols of flowchart, like when to use the rectangles, when to use diamond, when to use ellipse. Okay, and most of the flowchart that I have read miss the repeat loop. What is the repeat loop? This is the repeat loop. Okay, I took this comic from PhD comic, but I think it's a good example of a casual flowchart. All right, you can look at it. If you have any error or you have any unpredicted result, you know where to go. The other people who are going to imitate your result know where to go. But if you just skip the repeat loop and then go straight with arrow, the possibilities your thesis is indeed free from errors. Okay, I doubt about that. Or you decide to ignore the errors. and keep proceed till the end. Now, the second statement is not a good thing, right? Because if you decide to ignore the errors, it means the data is invalid. You should do something about it, right? The worst thing that you can get during Viva Voce, the examiner will ask you to repeat the experiment, and we don't want it, right? So be prepared. Know what you should do when you have any error or any mistake in your thesis. In your experiment. All right. So, okay. So how is it so far? Still good to go? You still there, right?
Good, good.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yes, we are
Yes,
very good at
interesting.
the
Okay. Thank
very
you.
clear. Thank you.
Next comments. Okay. This is the most. I think 90% of your examiner will say this. He will always this comment. Your analysis and discussion are not up to the standard, or your discussion is not that deep, or any mean and up the examiner. But it may be upsetting, but that's the truth. Don't take them to your heart. Use them your writing. So if you look at here, your thesis has 4 basic questions, right? You divide your thesis based on these 4 basic questions. The first one, why this study needs to be done, right? You answer this question by introducing the topic in chapter 1, and then you back it up with background, with citations, and then you come up with the problems in the field, right? Why I put the gradient over here? Because 50-50 will be divided. 50 will belong to a bigger scope, why the study needs to be done, and 50% will be claimed by you because your study is all about here, the problem, right? And it go down very focused into the objective. This is belong to you, and then methodology belong to you. Okay, you answer the question what you did. I did this problem. I did this objective, and I did it using this method. Right. And then what you found? You found the data in figures or tables. Right. This is belong to you. All those 3 belong to you, exclusive to you. So you will see very minor, I can say very minor citation in here. If you have a lot of citation in the problems in the field, it means the study is no longer novel, or the study is no longer valid to contribute in filling the gap. If you have many citation in objective, citation in methodology, it means you're copying other people's work. It's okay to use other people method, put proper citations, but you should highlight why you are using them, because this is yours. Your thesis, part of your thesis that truly belong to you is this part. And after that, how your study will advance the field. So you should answer the questions by providing good analysis and discussions. And lastly, you make a conclusions and do some recommendations. That's how you study will advance the field. So you talk about very technical, very focused in this part. It goes back to the main issue, the discussion and analysis. How you should write your result analysis. It's good if you have logical flow. First, you introduce the figure or claim, and then you support your claim with data. After that, you summarize. This is 1 paragraph. And don't forget to use the keyword to guide your reader. Okay? And when you writing the sentence in your result analysis, do not try to repeat what the reader has done. For example, in the first sentence, the first paragraph, Site A had soil lead levels of 115.2 milligram per kilogram and a soil pH of 6.8. It's like you're repeating the activity that has been done by the reader. What activity? The reader can look it from your table. The examiner can read it from your chart. Right? So when you're writing the analysis, guide the reader. do some analysis. For example, table 3 shows that site C had the lowest soil lead levels. So you show the reader where they can find the data, right? And you do signposting. However, site B had higher soil pH level, 6.8. This is the basic thing, the basic analytical thing you can do with your data when writing your data. So do not repeat site A had this. The examiner can locate by themselves from the table. Do your part, right? Do your mind exercising activity by doing the analysis. In the next one, I give you the example from Essay et al. Scientific report, journal by Nature. So in that article, they write the result analysis for this figure. Right. So given figure 4, the paragraph start by introducing the figure, right, in here. After that, sorry, the color is missing from here. It's supposed to be in here. So the first 2 lines in here is about introducing the figure. After that, they are analyzing the up and down in the paragraph, making comparison with previous researchers on that topic. And lastly, they close by stating the importance. Right? You can do this kind of style. Right? In the next example is another style I took from Liu et al. From the Nature again. And given figure 3 over here, okay, the first paragraph, the first sentence of the paragraph will introduce the figure again. And then they will explain what happened with the figure qualitatively, the up and down, all those analytical things. And after that, they compare with previous study, like just before in here. Don't forget to cite the previous work. And then you interpret. Before that, before this, the example is make the summary of the importance. In here, you interpret using your own sentence on the trend of this result. While for the discussion, this one for the analysis, right? And normally you can either directly go with the discussions or your discussion will go to different subchapter. Right? What the style that you can use to discuss the results in here? What you can do first, you state the problem. Right? After you reintroduce the problem, you reintroduce the objective. So what we can expect in here, the sequence of your chapter 4, the result and discussion, will follow the sequence of your objective. Right? That's the good thing to notice. After you provide the objective, you highlight the key finding. Right? This is the key finding. After you highlight the key finding, you can go with interpreting your findings. When you interpreting your findings, you can go with 3 directions. You go with similarities or differences. You can go with unexpected or negative results. I believe you will have negative results. And some of you may be thinking, I will not put the negative results. Right? I will try to hide it. What I can suggest you discuss with your supervisor. For me, it's okay to discuss the unexpected result or negative results, because that's the nature of science, the nature of experimental science. And in here, when you want to discuss the similarities or differences, first you state your findings. Right? After you state your findings, you do your interpretations. Don't forget, you need to establish your expertise. Right? You do your interpretations. What happened over there? What you think? What you think the factor that caused the findings occur? After you do interpretation, you find the support from previous research. You provide the support from journal A or journal B. Right? After you have the support complete, you can provide the next step. Do not be afraid to provide the next step. If you have question, let's say, but sir, let's say if I put the recommendations subchapter after the conclusions, it will also contain the next steps. Yes, it doesn't matter. You can always discuss it in the result and discussions. So the examiner will understand that you know what you are doing, right? You know what is the limitation of your study, right? And the next one, when you have the unexpected or negative results. Again, you can start by stating your results and then interpretations or explanation of your results. And then the next step for the field. But you close it with your implications. Even though your result is negative, even though you have unexpected results, but by putting the implication for the study, you know that, or the reader will know that your study is still important, right? Even though, regardless of the negative or unexpected result, you still can find the good from the worst, or you still can find the best from the worst. And don't forget to discuss your limitation as well. Or in here, you normally put it as a scope of study in chapter 1. Right? By putting limitations, you end the discussion positively. You're emphasizing the study's value. Right? You put the limitation and then you put the important. It's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for your thesis. And the next issue, you don't have the strong conclusions. How to make a strong conclusions and why strong conclusion is important. You start it strong, you're doing it strong, so you should finish it strong. It is important so you can leave a good impact to your examiner or your reader, right? So conclusions should always correspond to the objective. If you have 3 objectives, you should have 3 conclusions. State your main conclusion in the beginning, right? State your main conclusion in the beginning. After that, describe 1 or 2 most important findings. Okay, some people will put the brief discussion in here. Is unnecessary, but you can put it if you really want to highlight the finding. After that, don't forget to put the implications, specific implications. If you compare these 2 sentences, I modified from Just Check et al. Nature. We anticipate that this work will contribute to our understanding and future development. Okay, this is the very common sentence in conclusions. Understanding and future development. Be very specific. So if I ask you to choose the first and second, the second will contribute to the future development and implementation of a set of bioorthogonal tools to be used in new non-natural metabolic pathways. So you finish it strong. Right? People will impress, oh, he or she really know what his thesis is all about, what they are doing, right? So that's the importance of finishing strong. I will leave it to you for choosing the first or second sentence. For me, I prefer the second sentence. Right, moving to the next common problem, unprepared. The candidate is unprepared. Some example of these questions. When the examiner asks you a questions, you don't know the answer, and then you got panic, and you try to find the answer by flipping the pages. So you spend like 5 minutes flipping the pages, and the whole room suddenly in awkward situation, waiting for you to answer, right? You sure that you have written it there somewhere, or you're hoping that you have written it somewhere. Only you know it, right? But when the examiner asks the questions, the possibility that he cannot find the answer. When they want to test you, they will start with, okay, I want to know your basic knowledge. I want to know your general knowledge. It's not in your thesis. All right. They will start with that sentence always. But if they cannot find the answer to that question in the thesis, they will ask you. And you should know, because thesis is the printout of your mind. So our mind should immediately react to the question if it's already printed. Okay, but I know maybe you have left the thesis untouched for quite some time. Can be due to the life commitment, working commitment, lockdown commitment, or any other reasons. But back to the cover page, it is your name written there. If I want to know the story about Harry Potter, I will ask J.K. Rowling, the author. I will not ask William Shakespeare, for example. Well, technically, I cannot ask him since he passed away already. But for whatever reason, you should know the insight of your thesis. It is your masterpiece. Right to the level that when you read it back again after several times, after some times, you still enjoy reading your thesis. If you, the author, doesn't enjoy reading the thesis, how you will expect the examiner enjoy reading it, right? And as a bonus, right, in Viva Voce, you will always hear this kind of statement. Your presentation slides are clearer than your thesis. It's not really a negative impression per se. Actually, they are praising your slides, but indirectly implying that your thesis is hard to understand. Okay, next issue, the premature comparison. Premature comparison will lead to premature conclusions. If I give you these two charts and your task is to decide the most optimum super plasticizer portion for a use in concrete, right? Naturally, right, you will go with 1.5%, right, since it gives you the highest compressive strength, and that will be your first mistake. It is true that the number is indeed the highest, but do they differ significantly? That is the importance of putting error bar in here, right? So if I zoom into figure A, you will see that the upper bar of 1% SP will overlap the error bar of 1.5% SP. Okay, it will imply, theoretically, it will imply that we have less confidence on the mean value to represent the real compressive strength. Or you can say the strengths are not significantly different, right? So, but if you compare 1.5% and 2%, the error bar doesn't overlap each other. So you can say 1.5% strength is significantly higher than 2%. Okay, why this is important? Because maybe some of you is in this kind of field, you will bring 1.5% into the next mixed proportions. Since you are using the wrong conclusions or the wrong, I can say it's not wrong, but premature comparison or premature conclusions, the result may lead to another premature discussions or premature results. Because why? Maybe you still need to look from different perspective. Why you have to choose 1%? Is it cheaper? Or maybe it's easier to be mixed when you compare to 1.5%. So that kind of perspective that we are looking in your thesis, not directly jump into the conclusions. So it will be good, it will be best if you have a statistical analysis, and I believe it's a must for PhD. If your result is really requiring the statistical analytical tools, tools that you can use, t-test, f-test, ANOVA, or the others. Right. So you can save a bit from drawing the premature conclusions or drawing the premature comparisons. Some of the research, the nature may not be suitable for statistical analysis, but you can always discuss with your supervisor how to have a good approach in validating the data. Right. This is the next thing that I can suggest. Proofread your thesis by professional proofreader. There is no hidden trick over here. Simply proofread your thesis and never rely on your supervisor to check the grammar. Right? Do not get me wrong, your supervisors are the best, but they are too busy. If you put your thesis without getting proofread by a professional proofreader with a very messy grammar, the tendency of your supervisor to read it maybe after 1 month or after 2 months will be bigger. If you want your supervisor to check and read it faster, proofread your thesis. Right? This is like what anecdote for ourselves, right? When the professor asks from us, when I ask my student, okay, please write a paper as soon as possible. But when I receive the paper, it will take me some time to read the paper. This is a very common joke between PhD and supervisor. I hope you can proofread your thesis by a professional proofreader, and if you understand the basic grammar rules, you can invest a bit in a grammar checker software. Is a really good investment. For me, I invest in Grammarly. Is up to you. I'm not promoting Grammarly over here. And lastly, but I strongly suggest if you understand the basic grammar rules, because the grammar checker software will not do the work automatically for you. It's not a magical software. You still need to understand the basic grammar rules. And lastly, how to get help from the internal examiner. What does it mean with help? I quote the help in here, because in UTHM, still using the internal and external examiner system. So make use of it. Internal examiner has been with you since you did proposal defense, presented the progress report, had the pre-viva, and others. Always communicate with your panels during this period. Take the suggestion from them. Do not cut them loose. Your panels will check. Your panels will verify every correction that you have done. So what does it mean? It means that the thesis is indirectly supervised by them, since they approve the corrections based on their suggestions. Their signature is on the correction form, right? So unless you did not do the correction as suggested by them, since one of them will become the supporter during your viva, all right? Unless you did not do the correction suggested by them, then big possibility you will have a good time from your internal examiner during viva voce. There will be, I'm not implying the external as a devil over here, but you will have supporter during your viva. It's very rare. Only one maybe when I chair the sessions, the internal is attacking the student. Only once or two, but it's quite weird, because he or she, the internal, is verifying the corrections, and after that the thesis will go to viva voce, and he or she will become the examiner again, but he again correcting what he or she has suggested. So the possibility the candidate didn't do the correction properly. So kita be positive minded. And during the viva voce, your supervisor cannot talk. All right, only the chairman and the examiners can talk. So how good is that? If you have one supporter at your side to support you. So always use every evaluation held by the faculty before viva voce. It's very beneficial, and do not cut them loose. Do not try to avoid the panels. Always communicate with them. Get the suggestion from them, right? Because they will be your evaluator. Oh, I have bonus. How to write your title. It's very simple actually. Use this method, the variable outcome sample concept. I give you a bad example over here. The effect of transfer printing of epitextual layers of group 3, 5 layers to the wafer scale integration of silicon, right? I use this kind of a title before I know how to write a good title. So what type of effect over here? You cannot really find what type of effect, right? So when you want to write a catchy and good title, you state the variable or the conditions. The condition is the transfer printing of epitaxial layers. After that, the outcome. The outcome is the wafer scale integrations. What is your sample? The group 3,5 lasers on silicon. When you rearrange these three elements, you will get wafer scale integration of group 3,5 lasers on silicon using transfer printing of epitaxial layers. I always use this concept when I want to suggest a new title for the thesis, to the thesis that I examine. So you can start to use it as well. All right, I think that will be all I can share with you today. Let me know if you have any questions so we can discuss it together. Thank you. Assalamualaikum and selamat pagi.
Thank you, Dr. Andri, for the informative and interesting talk. Now we can begin with Q&A session. Please feel free to ask questions to our panel.
I hope my presentation is clear enough for you. If you have any questions, please write in the chat box. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Boleh, boleh.
Maybe I missed some of your slide because of internet error here. How can get the slides?
Oh, okay. I think the committee will give you the slides later on. I will give the slides to the committee and they will share the slide with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome. You can also ask in BM. I can speak in BM.
Doc. Hello, Doc.
Yes, saya.
Ahmadin here from.
Yes.
I nak tanya, during the Viva,
Yeah.
how about if the examiner, example like, not certifies, maybe not certify, mean that there is some argument between our opinion and the examiner opinion. How do we tackle it? Maybe that there are different view of research of the technical thing that may be quite different. It's not right or wrong, but maybe we have some argument on that. Maybe the principle or the methodology is quite different. So when the examiner question us, do we need to how do we want to answer it? Do we need to retaliate or we need to to accept their comments? So because maybe sometimes there are different, all of the researcher they maybe have different principle or methodology. How do we handle it during the Viva?
Okay, thank you. Very good questions. One thing that I noticed when I become the examiner or chair the sessions, the student, what I can suggest the student or the candidate to reply the concern from the examiner. The first one about the different concept, right? So you can always say that you have presented your proposal, you have presented your thesis in progress report in pre-viva or maybe in proposal very beginning, and the panels have agreed with your concept. And after you discuss with your supervisor, he or she will also agree with the concept. So you try to accommodate the perspective from the panels, right? I believe the perspective of the panel may be raised up because you don't highlight the the negative results or unpredicted results, right? Maybe some of the concern is already in their mind and become the scope of unpredicted results. But because since you did not discuss about it, your result seems so perfect, right? Result seems so perfect. So he or she the examiner will try to question the results. That's why I'm looking the importance of highlighting the negative things. You can always refer to it. Let's say you already saying you can say that I have conducted the experiment using this concept, this approach, and I have this data, but somehow I have the outliner, and I believe the outliner may be the things that can be solved by your approach, Prof, or your approach, doctor. I will take note on it, and I will discuss with my supervisor, and we'll see what we can do about it. But so far, the scope of my study will be focusing on this approach. The limitation of my study will be focusing on this approach. You can answer with that way, and I believe the examiner will accept the answer. If I'm the examiner, I will accept the answer because it's like you're showing your credibility in highlighting the positive and the negative, and you prepare the answer for the negative as well.
Okay, thank you, Doc, for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay, Dr. Andri, here's a question from Siti Soleha. Can doctor suggest how to write a good research gap?
Okay, if I can share again about the research gap from my student, and I'm using the same concept. Yeah. Okay, this is what I always do, all right? You need to set the boundary of your research. If your research is about material A, for example, sorry, concrete A, I'm talking about concrete perspective. You can apply using your own perspective later on. If you're setting the boundary for concrete A, you study about all the things that people have done in concrete A using the material A, B, C, or D. Right? You can show the evidence that this is how you do it. This slide is good if you want to show it in the presentations, right? But when you want to write it as a paragraph in your chapter 2, I believe in chapter 2, the summary of research gap, you can state using this kind of sentence, all right? There have been extensive research using industrial byproduct such as material A, material B to replace Portland cement in the last 10 years. However, only a few articles investigated the use of material C and material D for a similar purpose. And then you go deeper, further observation of technique A to treat the waste show a significantly lower number. And then using the technique B for concrete B is showing no result at all. Right? So that's how you fill the gap. If you really cannot fill the gap, it's also good if you can contribute to the body of knowledge. Right? The researcher will, the examiner will understand your concern or your limitations because we are not trying to solve the third world problem, kan? You only have 3 years, you have limited funding, so it's okay for you to just contribute to the body of knowledge, not necessary to be filling the gap. If let's say the filling gap is not possible to do. But you have to show that people have done this, people have done that, and you want to contribute this. Like when you're building a house, it's okay not to provide the very basic land, but you can provide the foundations, you can provide the floor, you can provide the column. That's the contribution to the body of knowledge.
Okay, I hope Dr. Andri's answered your questions, Soleha. So there is another question from Nur Zaini. What if our findings are different from existing study? How we justify that if we can't find any study to support our finding?
Okay, it's a very good question and very practical. But normally, if you really cannot find anything in the world to support your finding, it means your finding is error, right? You deviate that far from the knowledge, right? Something maybe is not really in the correct place. But if you are sure that you can support the finding using another tools, for example, you test using testing A, right? You look at my face from perspective A. Imagine my face is the result of your thesis. You look from perspective A, and then you find there is no similar results happen out there that can justify my finding about front face. But you are sure after you look from the side A and side B, you believe this is me. Right? You believe this is me. Go with it. No problem. As long as you can justify, you believe that you have found a new thing, right? That's why very rare to find a new thing with a good supportive, right? If you really cannot find the justification, let's say you can only look from one perspective, it means your result is wrong. Maybe you design your experiment not in a proper way, but after you test your specimen from different perspective, from side, from behind, from top, you can conclude the additional experiment, the additional testing will support your main testing. Okay, then you're finding a new things. You can say you have found a novel thing. Then maybe you will get a very high citation for that if you publish in journal. So do not get scared. As long as you can support it with a very good evidence, not only from one perspective. One perspective is not enough. If you found a result that is have so many differences with a journal, with books, but you only look it from one perspective, something wrong. Okay, I hope that answer your question, Nurzaini. Try to look from different perspective using different tests.
Assalamualaikum, Doctor.
Waalaikumsalam.
Sorry, because I cannot open my webcam.
No problem.
Okay, so I just want to ask, let's say if, sorry, my name is Fazira.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say if we would like to do some like pilot study, right? Okay. So pilot study or sample size for our analysis, actual survey. Okay. So like we know that usually for the pilot study we need to have a 30 and above, 30 and until 45. That is a normal range that we found in the journal. But somehow if we actually go minimum requirement, so that there is a journal that supported like 10, 15. So if I go to minimum requirement, is it okay? As long as they have a supported journal, and then but somehow if we look into the journal is not updated. I mean, like 5 years back. Is it okay to use or how? What is your opinion?
Okay, my opinion on this matter, I will love to see it as a different chapter. So you have chapter 1 introduction, right? And then you have chapter 2 literature review normally. And then you have chapter 3 methodology. Chapter 4, I will love to see it as a preliminary study. And it will show that you prepare that much for your study. After you have your pilot study as a preliminary study, you go with the real study, the real result, the actual results. No problem with that. So you can always claim it as a preliminary study.
Okay.
You can specify as a one chapter khas in your thesis, right? And I would like to highlight that even though the guideline from university saying that you can have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, but it's a guideline. You can have different chapter. Chapter 4 doesn't really have to be what result and discussions. And chapter 3 doesn't really have to be methodology. It means it's up to the nature of your research. For example, the Fazira just now, chapter 3 maybe is about the pilot study. Right? It doesn't have to be methodology. Like for me, my thesis, chapter 3 is not about methodology. It's about the preliminary study. So what I did before I do the real experiment, before I conclude and conduct the real experiment, the main experiment. Okay, and the position is up to you. If let's say you want to validate, then maybe pilot study is at the last or the last chapter. If your pilot study is to verify, the last chapter. If your pilot study is to support the main research, then it's going to be at the beginning of the chapter. I hope that answers your concern.
So far okay, doctor. But I just want to ask if I like some journals said is actually advise us to actually go certain numbers like 35 or 100. But I just go to minimum as long as there are some supported journal to actually support my methodology is okay, right?
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Okay, when you're talking about journal publication, it's belong to the journal themselves. It's the authority of reviewer. But sometimes you get a very strict reviewer. Sometimes you really not that lucky, right? But sometimes you're lucky, you get a very good reviewer. Doesn't really matter with 10, 20, or 30 what number. Okay, but for thesis, it's up to how you design your thesis. Okay, if the panels during proposal defense agree with your scope, then you're good to go. If the panels during progress report is good or agree with your scope, you're good to go as well. Journal is different story, I can say. Journal, you really have to look, the editor of the journal will look at the comment of reviewer. If let's say one reviewer say, you need more, but two of the reviewers say, you can go with it, then normally the editor will go with the two examiners. That's what I experienced.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Welcome.
For the explanation. All right.
Okay, doctor. It looks like Muhammad Ridwan has a question for you. Please, Muhammad Ridwan.
Okay.
Thank you, doctor. Sorry, Muhammad Ridwan. Muhammad Sharif. Yeah. Okay. One question from me. On literature review, because in our thesis we have topic, issue, problem, methodology, proposal, and solution. At which portion or part we need to focus more on the literature review? How if the problem is unique? Like myself, I'm doing study on resolving nuisance stripping of protection relay at my place. So what is our focus on the literature review? Is it on the methodology? Is it on the nuisance stripping problem? Or etc.
Okay.
Thank you, doctor.
All right. So for literature review, you discuss only things that you need in your study. So you don't provide the theory. You don't provide what is the definition of this, what is the definition of that. Right? I prefer if you want to provide the literature review, you do the review as it names. So you already have the journal, you have list of publication, right? And then you have the scope. You have the methodology from the flowchart. Okay. So based on that scope, you discuss only things that you need. Okay. Let's say you showed. Can you mention like 5 keywords from your study?
Okay, 5 keywords from my study: nuisance stripping, protection relay, nuisance stripping, infrared thermography, condition-based monitoring.
Okay.
Condition-based maintenance, yeah.
All right. So based on that keyword, I believe those keyword has been highlighted in your methodology, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So what I would like to see is how you look at the trend in all those keywords. What is the trend? What people have done? That will be the first section of literature review. And the next sections will be what are the things that related to your testing? What they can support. If let's say you're talking about data A, do they provide the same data? Are you trying to achieve the same data, or you trying to achieve a different trend? That what I would like to see. And at the end, when you want to summarize your literature review, you want to fill the gap. All these things is about summarizing, is talking about the novelty. Some people will say about the novelty. Some people will say about research gap, right? You're comparing what you want to do and what people have done. That's why it's always good to focus on what people have done that related to your methodology.
Okay.
If let's say you want to find keyword one, right? Keyword one. Immediately talk about keyword one.
Keyword,
so, 2.1 is about this. And then keyword 2.2 is about this.
I see.
And then your flowchart will talk about the testing, for example. So what people have achieved in that particular keyword. Okay, you're trying to get the same data, or you're trying to go with different directions. From there, you can summarize the gaps. You can summarize what is the difference between yourself and people work. I hope that answer your questions.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Okay. And avoid writing the theory.
Oh, okay.
Because in literature review, we are trying not to write a book, but we are trying to write the review. We review the literature. It's supposed to be the printout of our mind, what we are thinking about that review of that literature. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Right. Thank you.
Sama.
Doc, sorry again, Doc. I'm Ahmadun. Just now you said in the literature review is like avoid writing a theory. But how about if we need to explain the methodology in terms of the modeling, where we start from the theory until to become to the model. So is it a different?
Do you really need a theory?
Yeah, because the end result is that we come out with the new modeling. For example, we come up with a new modeling, maybe enhancement of the new calculation of modeling or mathematics. So, but we need to explain about the theory first, right? Because it's real explain of our methodology of what we want to do.
Okay. What I mean with theory over here is like the basic definition. Okay.
Okay.
I give you the example of environment, for example. So when you're talking about environment quality, you don't really have to provide what is the definition of environment quality, right? But you go directly to the test of environment quality, what people have done with environment quality. Do not go with the basic theory, all the level 1 theory, all those things. But if you really feel you have to go with all those theory, you can put it, no problem. If you really need it for your thesis, because you want to compare, you're going to obtain the theory as well, for example, from your modeling for your simulation. So it's good if you want to compare the theory A and your theory, then you can put the theory because it's going to be part of your discussions, part of your analysis.
Okay, Doc. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any more questions for our panel? We will be allowed to accept one final question for our panel. Okay, so we have a question from Sabarudin. Please, Sabarudin.
Thanks, cikgu. Aku nak gini dah. Sekejap.
Silap tekan tu. I think silap tekan tu.
So it looks like we have covered all of our questions. So Dr. Andri, is there anything else you wanted to cover before wrap up?
I think that will be all. I would like to say thanks for inviting me. I hope all the materials that I have shared today can be beneficial to you. If let's say you have anything to ask, you can always email me or contact me directly. I will share the slides if you need it with the committee later on, and they will give it to you. Right, so thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Very good.
Thank you, Doctor.
Appreciate it much, Doctor. Inshallah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you again for answering those questions and for the fruitful presentation. So I believe that Dr. Andri's sharing is beneficial for your thesis writing. It was a pleasure to have Dr. Andri with us today. So before we end the webinar, I would like to ask all the participants kindly fill in the attendance form for your e-certificate. The attendance link is given at the chat box. A webinar is not complete without a photography session. Now, everyone, please turn on your camera and give a big smile.
So everyone, this one is for page 1. Okay, 3. Everyone smile. 3, 2, 1. Okay, done with page 1. I'll wait for page 2. Okay, this one is for page 2. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we are done with page 2. Wait for a while. Okay, now page 3. Everyone smile. Page 3. 3, 2, 1. Okay, page 4. Everyone, 3, 2, 1. Okay, page 5. Everyone, 3, 2, 1. And now, final page, page 6. Everyone smile. 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
So this concludes the webinar. Thank you all for attending. And I kindly ask the others to leave this Zoom meeting except for FTK postgraduate students to remain for our next program, which is FTK Postgraduate Student Chapters Committee 2021 Annual General Meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck with the meeting. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.